Well, I welcome Adrian Joyce with me here on the floor. You are the director of Renovate Europe campaign, and you were just joining the panel discussing about renovation of buildings in Europe, which is a very hard task and a very urgent matter. So what is your work about?
Well, in the Renovate Europe campaign, we are a political communications campaign seeking to create a new legislative framework such that Europe can reduce the energy demand of its building stock by 80% by 2050 as compared to 2005 levels. I'm very happy to say that the European institutions and the Member States see renovation as a key sector for the future recovery, economic, financial and social recovery of Europe. And why is that the case? It's because renovation of our buildings will deliver multiple benefits, not just to the people whose buildings are renovated, but also to public finances, to society at large, and that through the creation of millions of direct local jobs to workers across Europe, taking them out of unemployment, giving them more disposable income, and in the process creating buildings that are more comfortable, healthier and better for our population. This ambition that we have has been reflected by the European Parliament itself in a report that it adopted in March. It has written into its own text, adopted unanimously, that the Member States should reduce the energy demand of their buildings by 80% by 2050 as compared to 2010 levels in that case.
Well, these are all targets, long-term targets, but the situation right now, tomorrow and after tomorrow, is that our renovation rate is too slow in Europe. So what is your answers for this short-term mobilization of renovation activities?
Well, not only is our rate too slow, but the depth of renovation is too little. So at the moment we have about a 1% renovation rate in Europe, and we do not know if those renovations are energy efficient renovations. In fact, we rather suspect that they're more aesthetic or cosmetic renovations. So we need to ramp up the renovation rate from the current rate of 1% to a rate of 3% by 2020 and continue that rate across the following decades. We also need to make sure that by 2020 all of the renovations are capturing the full energy efficiency potential in buildings, which is in excess of 60%, so that some will have a higher level like 90 or 95%, maybe the majority around 70%, but then we will achieve our ambition of an 80% reduction by 2050.
So how about the current energy building directive? Does it already give a good framework?
Yes, I think this directive is very promising for the construction sector as a whole and for the solar thermal industry in particular, and that because it requires all new buildings from 2020 onwards to be nearly zero energy buildings. In my view, a very major opportunity for solar thermal because there's a requirement to reduce the energy demand of the building and then to satisfy the residual demand by significant amounts of renewables. Hence, solar thermal has a role there. In the renovation market, which should be a much bigger market, I see great potential in the solar thermal industry teaming up with member companies of our campaign, for example, to create new approaches to integrating solar thermal into building elements, into prefabricated elements, which can then in a non-disruptive way be applied to existing buildings to create highly energy performing buildings. I think these partnership approaches are really key, where all different sectors and segments of the industry will get together and devise new, more innovative approaches which will satisfy what will undoubtedly be a huge demand and a surge as we see unit energy prices going up in the decades to come.
We had some difficulties in the past, the solar thermal sector, to mobilize architects for this, renovation, energetic renovation subject. Will this change?
Yes, but how quickly is the big question. And I'm absolutely personally convinced that all of the professionals, the white collar and blue collar professionals in the building sector are now aware of the need. I fear that they're not yet adequately informed of the available solutions, and in particular not adequately informed about how the different solutions can be put together to create the right package for a project and giving an optimal performance at an optimal cost. This is why a moment ago I've called for greater partnership and greater understanding across the segments in order to come up with new solutions for this huge market that we can create.
Are you working just in Brussels, that means on an international level, or you have sort of subsidiaries on the national level?
Interesting question. The Renovate Europe campaign itself is an EU-level political communications campaign, but because of the market opportunity provided by the campaign and its ambition, we see that a number of national initiatives are getting up and off the ground in some of the existing countries, some of the larger countries like France and Germany and the UK. We see a lot of initiatives. But also in countries who are more sceptical about energy efficiency, Poland, the Czech Republic, Hungary and so on, are also looking at national efforts to increase the renovation rate of buildings and increase the energy performance of the buildings. And in this context, the Renovate Europe campaign partners with those national initiatives to ensure that there's coherence between the national efforts and that they contribute meaningfully and in an aggregated way to the achievement of our overall European ambition. So it's a long answer to a short question. We work principally at EU level while we keep an awareness of what's happening at national level, because no matter how well we succeed at the EU level, we must see progress on the ground in the member states, even in regions and cities. So yeah, it's a bit of everything actually.
Actually, what market potential are we talking about? How many million buildings need to be renovated?
Well, in Europe at the moment we estimate there are about 210 million buildings, and of those buildings there will be a proportion that cannot be touched because of their historic or cultural significance or the technology used to build them. So if we imagine 90% of the buildings have to be touched in some way through a renovation, we're talking about 185, 190 million individual buildings, ranging from single family homes right up to palaces and major sports centres and so on. So a very, very significant market opportunity. In fact, we've calculated in the Renovate Europe campaign that if we can ramp up the renovation rate from 1% to 3% and ensure that all of those renovations are deep energy renovations, we could add up to 800 billion to the turnover of the construction sector by 2020. And that's if all other factors remain the same, meaning if we are very successful driving renovation, you could expect that maybe the new build demand would reduce somewhat, so there would be a compensation. But still, we're talking hundreds of billions of euro of extra activity per year used to create new jobs, new manufacturing capacity, etc.
Great. Good luck with your work. Thank you so much for the interview.
Not at all. Great pleasure. Thank you.